And we are live for the DJL podcast in a wonderful Sunday night. I've been begging to do this cast with Mike for a while, so I'm glad you're finally settled down, Mike.
After months of dodging you, it's worked out.
It's worked out. Like, what was going on? Like, catch us up on the life of Mike.
Yeah, relocating, moving different places. You know, work gets in the way too. Changing jobs and living situation at the same time. So it made things a bit difficult.
Because I ran into you one time in front of Snowden Metro, which is where I still live around, and then you've been hopping in different places since.
Yeah, pretty much.
But now back on the shore, the lovely shore,
Greenfield Park
home of Centennial Regional High School.
and a bunch of crack addicts. Yeah,
Wait, there's crack addicts.
I assume I haven't looked, but I'm sure there's a place where they all congregate there.
All right, let's get to it. We didn't have a chance to talk about rules, obviously, because a lot of us had to get to the draft late, and the draft itself takes a lot of time. But I think if we're gonna get anything done, we want to speed run through rules that, like stats. I think with you and other Mike commenting on the podcast with John, we're moving in the right direction of getting something done. But obviously, that stuff is for next season. But there are stuff immediately that can be done this season that should be voted on, and I think have a 95% chance of passing. So number one we both have experience with, eliminating the last week. I'll let you rant about a bit about it, but I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, who was it? Who was it that pointed out at the end of the draft that we didn't talk about rules at all? I think it was Barry. He was just like, "Oh my god, we didn't mention a single rule." That's hilarious. But yeah, honestly, I got to be careful talking about stats because I think I might be a little bit biased. Like maybe I like the subset of stats that would have led to me winning last year, and I don't like the stats that made me lose, like game-winning goal, and you know. But yeah, no,
But eliminating the last week, you're all for it, obviously.
100%. Austin Matthews taking his beauty naps, going for like Manny Petties and stuff. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't scoring points for me. So yeah, that last week has to die.
And
Absolutely.
I just don't see anybody having an opposing view that I've heard of. So, yeah, hopefully we can just set up a poll. No need for discussion. Get that passed right away.
There was the
Um,
fact that John mentioned that it moves up the date for uh
the trade deadline.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, that one I'll leave as number three. So I have three things that I believe are 95% to pass or close to. So number two would be there was a small talk amongst a group of us, which is blindly submitting your keepers, because a lot of people say like we just openly show them, and you may gain an edge if you're the last one. I think a lot of us don't care because we just ask each other who should we keep all the time, so it's not really a secret even until the last day. But it is true if we want to be not, I don't want to use serious or professional about this league, but if we want to be more, I don't know, consistent or whatever, it should be part of the rules that we submit everything to John, I guess, and he reveals, and he has to, I guess, promise to not look at them somehow. Like he gets emailed them, he doesn't look at them, or he's allowed to as commissioner or whatever, and he publishes it all on one day. And Dan said that might actually be exciting for us, instead of reacting to random teams posting in July. We have one day, everyone posts, and then maybe a lot of commentary can be made by the league. And I don't know, me and Derek can do a show the next day about it.
That's one of the main reasons I like it is because I miss when certain people post their keepers. Like there's like two or three that I just miss completely, and then Facebook's whatever algorithm bullshit like jumps certain ones to the top, and I only see those. And like it'd be cooler to see like all of them in one shot, and then just have like a big group discussion about it. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's actually gaming the system for that, but I mean, like usually,
Barry admitted that he actually games it, that he
of course,
waits and
it
it
would be
affects
great.
his decision. So we'll have to take his word, and so that would remove some gaming. And it's like when it comes up, I think most of us are no, not most of us, but a lot of us, including me, are indifferent. So if people think it's the right way to do things, which I agree, it's the correct way. Let's just do it. Let's just vote pass this. So number two things easily pass. So number three, the last one, is we're bringing back the trade deadline thing. I think for the most part, people I've talked to have either no opinion or strong or okay or pretty good with moving the deadline. And I'm one of them because I think we've been trying to this thing copy the NHL too much. And we've seen, I think the argument to, I said I would try to win Tonin over if he was still on the fence, is that he's always for more interesting decisions, right? And I think what happens is some teams, they just like wait until the last week, which is the week before the playoffs, to see if they make it or not, to sell everything or not, right? Like Derek Blaze told me, like he was gonna trade me potentially Duchesne, Doughty, and all these other old guys, but because he was on the cusp, he didn't do it, and then he waited until the end and he made it, right? So he didn't have to make that decision, which would be in the real NHL, it's like a month, 6 weeks before the playoffs. That's the deadline. And at that point, it's more interesting. Like, do you think you have what it takes to win it all? Do you not? It's less clear. So it makes it for a more interesting decision. Do you agree, Mike?
Oh yeah. Anytime you got to gamble, it makes things a bit more interesting. I don't see that as a huge limitation to fixing the first problem we mentioned, which is, certain players taking vacations and screwing over your entire year. But you know what? Even if Matthews played, like let's say Matthews played, honestly, and he scored like 5 goals, it wouldn't have changed our score. Like what I really needed was to come up 3 truck and for Robertson not to score on Anaheim. that would have made a difference. But yeah, even though I complained that Matthews was gone that last week, it didn't make a huge difference. I think you pointed out to me when I was bitching like months and months ago.
I mean, you could also find solace that if we didn't count the last week, I was handedly winning after the first week, I think, and so you can find some solace in that. But let me see. So so these 3, I think the third one maybe not 95%, but close to, because people seem to be like, yeah, whatever. I think we should do it. Again, it makes no sense to allow people to wait until the last minute to sell. Like, what are we trying to do? We're not trying to make it so that it's obvious for teams to sell and buy. It should be interesting. Like Gabi, right? He didn't have a single pick in our draft, and he didn't even make the playoffs. But that's because he was forced to gamble. Right at the beginning of the season, he felt he had the tools. He gambled and he missed. And we should see more of these type of things, right?
Yeah, which is kind of hilarious. Like, I made fun of him for going for it and then flaming out. But then if I had done what he did and gone for it, I might have had a chance against you. So I can't blame him for what he did, because honestly, him and I were like kind of in a similar situation. We were like walking the line.
I'm going to pull up let's see if I can. Going to pull up our finals, because I wanted to.
Oh yeah, before we get into that, the stat changes, I think the first 3 that we just talked about, like maybe throw in like a small stat change too, but I think changing a few of them at a time is probably a good idea, rather than like overhauling the entire league's rule set and ending up with a totally different league one year to the next. Like that would just like destroy the draft. Like all of a sudden your entire strategy is out the window. Like little bit at a time, and I think that should go easy.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what, like, obviously nothing can pass for this upcoming season, but maybe the one after. What do you feel to wrap up categories? I don't want to talk too much about it because I think nothing's going to happen. But what do you feel from gauging from your talks with people or seeing the chat? Like, what do you think is the closest thing to pass, or what is something that you like is you think has the most public support?
I like the idea of, I think like the main priority is splitting up truck and removing GAA. Like, take a little bit of power away from the goalies, like even the playing field out for that, and make selections more interesting. Because like this draft, if I'm looking at a forward, it's like, oh, I want somebody who produces but also doesn't have a shitty plus minus. And if I'm looking at a defenseman, it's like somebody that produces but has decent truck. But like splitting truck up, then like it makes the selection process a bit more interesting. So you're not always looking at the the same guys. And then goalies are just Mike Blondin said it. They're too overpowered.
I think removing GA will have strong opposition, but
yeah,
I think again, at least 9 out of 12 of us are for splitting truck. So let's make sure we vote on it at least mid-season and figure out something. I think this is finally the first category change since like combining truck, right? Like we combined hits, blocks, and PIMs, and I think we can get it done, boys. Like get it done for next season. And I just wanted to pull up the finals because I feel I had a small discussion with Derek Tonin, who had mentioned like he might not love 2-week playoffs. Maybe I forgot. I didn't ask him the reason. I wonder if it's because he wants every week in the playoffs to be the same, or he wants every week in the playoffs to be the same amount of length as the regular season. I didn't get that deep with him, but if you're listening, Derek, let me know. But I feel like 2 weeks did offer some different strategy, and like in real life, playoff hockey can have different strategy than regular season hockey. And I don't know if you were thinking about this, Mike, but like heading into the last week, I was like looking at stats that I could win or lose, and I don't know if from your perspective if it influenced any of your decisions, because we have 3 pickups that we can use for the entirety of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that period between the first week and the second week where you and I were like retooling based on like available players, that part was really cool. We were just like frantically moving stuff around, and honestly, like it adds a really fun element to it. I don't want to get rid of that. Way too fun.
Do you remember anything that made you want to maybe add a different player or switch up a certain position? I know like the main thing for you was whether Matthews was playing or not.
Yeah, but I mean, at a certain point, I mean, especially from free agency players, like it's hard to, get competitive in the goals, assist category. But really, what I was trying to do is like make changes that would make me more competitive truck, because you were killing me. So that was the goal.
But after the first week, you were winning, and so I was actually I was holding off picking. I don't know. I'm going to tell you this for the first time. I was actually holding off picking people up in the second week before the Monday. I wanted to wait last minute because I didn't want you to react to the pickups I was going to make. And the reason was because I was behind you in truck, and I added 2 big truck guys. So I added guys that had no business being on my team otherwise. In Austin Watson, went up with 19 truck for me, and the Mark Borowiecki, who ended up with 30 truck, and even with a combined 49 truck, I only beat you by 2 truck after all.
Didn't somebody draft Borowiecki this draft?
Sorry? No, I don't think so, because he's always injured. But the reason I didn't want you to react is because you could have it depends if you thought you could catch up to me in goals and stuff. Because you could have countered that by also picking up goons, and so to maintain your truck lead. So that was I wanted to keep the tricks up my sleeve. But you also were able to compete with game-winning goals plus more than I thought you would. So I know it really depends. That you were even winning that at one point, and I could have lost the league by putting in these truck guys, but.
Yeah, that whole period was a blur, but the one thing I remember most clearly is laying in bed watching Dallas play, and I remember I sent you a message. I tried to find it before this to show you the message I sent you on Telegram saying oh my God, I know it, Robertson's gonna score now and destroy my hopes and dreams. But I deleted Telegram because there was too much crypto spam. But yeah, and then I think 5 minutes after I sent you that, Robertson scored, and crushed my hopes and dreams. It was
God. But yeah, for the Goons, I had key injuries. Like Radko Gudas was like out for the most of the playoffs. I think he played in our playoffs. He played like one game in the finals. So I really needed these other randoms to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
But last one topic is sort of on the subject of rule changes. Like one of the ones that I've suggested that I think some people are mostly meh on, like okay if we do it. Some like you are for it, and then there's Barry that has some genuine concerns about it, which is like going to 8 teams in the playoffs. And for me, it's like we had a good discussion back and forth with Barry, and I recognize his concern of the trade activity, but at the same time, in my head, it's like because I think we either it becomes a topic of discussion, but it's like, is trading currently broken? Is it bad? Do we have not enough trading? And then like I listed some examples, like Calvin having a bunch of picks. We have the usual Gobby trades. Me and you made 2 trades addressing needs from each team. Like I traded Quick for Pavelski, which we both kept. I traded Hartman, a winger that you needed, for Spurgeon, a D that I needed, that we both needed to beef up our teams for the playoffs. I got Foligno and Trocheck from Derek. So it's like, is there not enough trading going on?
I kept Hartman too.
Is it not enough trading going on in your opinion? Do we need more trading? Like, what is the current? How do you feel like the current side of trading is, or like? And it's like, how much trading do we want? Should it be like the real league where it's like you have pickups and drops for the most part, and then you have 1 or 2 key trades that fill a certain hole and you're good, which is what happened to me and you last year. So I can't say like we need more trading.
Yeah, because I mean, the more guys you have that aren't making the playoffs, I feel like the only motivation there is sell stuff off, get picks for next year, and then just like take a back seat and see what happens, or just like delete the fan track shortcut off your phone and then wait till September. But I think if you have 8 guys who might have a chance for the finals, I feel like there's going to be a lot of trading like between you and me, where like we're just filling gaps and trying to stay competitive. And I feel like it's either going to be the same amount of trading, or you might even get more just because there's more people in it.
Right. So there's different types of trading. It's like from a math standpoint, if you're going to say there's more buyers and less sellers, right? You can argue that, oh, there's obviously going to be less trading, right? Because there's just but at the same time, like there's going to be more trades like me and you, right? Like needs-based trading of 2 people competing. And if more teams are making it, you're less likely to be afraid to trade to a rival because that person might not make the finals, or less likely. I know Barry doesn't want to trade to me because I lead in the championship number of championships run. And if I'm a team that has a bye, you really don't want to help one of the teams that have a bye become even stronger, because that even like greatly increases your chances of winning the whole thing. I tabulated stats. Like I forgot what I said in my post. Like 7 out of the last 9 champions were ones with a bye. So I think, I don't know, like I feel like Tonin would be on my side if he saw the stat and be like, yeah, we need to change things up, as someone that wants to see like fresh new champions all the time, or make it less predictable. So like 7 out of 9 of people that gets buys ends up winning it all. And we had Mike, who was trying to trade certain defensemen, other Mike, with I think his Anaheim defensemen were like on pace for 40 points or something, were decent Ds that would shore up any depth, but no one wanted them. No one wanted them for anything because the top 6 teams already had their bases covered. Like, so did you, right? Like, you had enough to get rid of Spurgeon, and you didn't need some other garbage D. You could have picked a one up that was similar. So,
except if I had thrown him some picks for those D-men, I might have had a chance in truck. There was a couple weeks after I told Mike, nah, thanks, I'm good. I don't want your garbage D. A couple weeks after, I was just like, oh fuck, he's right. I could have used those. Like, oh well.
So who knows? Like, I feel like, again, and if we push the playoff deadline, the trade deadline, well before, it's not obvious to me that there'd be less trading. In fact, we want to help the worst teams, because what we feel with our keeper system is generally the best teams stay pretty good for the next year. Then you have the middling teams that could shift to being really good or bad, but then the really bad teams, they just like they don't really shift to like a contender right away unless they did a really good selling job. We don't see that. We've seen like, you know, Tonin feeling like he might not be a contender for many years, right? Like I don't really want that. I want some teams to be able to compete. They shouldn't have to wait like 5 years or whatever. And I think like in the case of 8 buyers and 4 sellers, hey, maybe the shittier teams might get better stuff because there's more buyers in this case, right? Like Mike couldn't even give those guys for free to me. I didn't need them. Like I couldn't roster a lot of these things that could have picks. So maybe we actually need more buyers. So that's something like I don't think is very counterintuitive, but I think might actually happen. Like the very worst teams might get more trades done. But on the flip side, as we discussed, I don't think we want obvious trades like necessarily. Like we don't want, oh, the sellers, you know, they pick the 12 people that they want to keep, they sell everything and auction them off. It's like pretty brainless compared to like being forced to be a middling team. And like you and Blaze we had to make a decision, would have had to make a decision 1 month out, like 6 weeks out. You didn't know if you, him, Gabi were going to make the playoffs. And then it's like, okay, decision time. What do you guys do? Do you load up? Do you sell some stuff? And to be honest, some teams, even if they have a playoff spot, like even if they make it in my suggestion, that 7-8, they might still sell because they might feel like they can't win. Like Derek was going to sell, even though he was firmly in the 5th spot, because you just know the construction of your team doesn't really make sense, doesn't line up against some of the better teams in the playoffs.
I think if there were 8 teams making the playoffs, and like you were saying, like me and Derek were like hovering 6, 7, 8 teams making the playoffs, I would have been a buyer at that point. But the cutoff being 6, I was like, nope. I'm not messing up my draft next year to like flame out in the playoffs. But then things changed, rapidly. But yeah, I think, like you were saying, if you have more buyers, there will be more trading. Because like I know for myself, if I don't think I have a chance, then I'm not really trading much. I'm trying, to at least like conserve my draft for the next year, or yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know if that overall there'll be more trading. There'd be more certain types of trading, but guys like you in the middle might not trade at all, right? So versus this system, with current system of top 6, like if you were 7 and 8, you might sell, right? You will sell if the top 6 make it, but if top 8 make it, you would just not do anything, possibly. So there'd be less trading for certain teams. That's what we think might happen. But again, my thing is like, is the trading level so bad that if it actually did go down, would it be bad? Would it be that bad? To me, that's debatable. That it would be like it'd be so hard to trade. Like for me, like the reason things are hard to trade is like certain owners are really stingy, and the other thing I brought up was because our bench might need to be bigger. My point was you can only trade something, a needs-based trade, when you feel like you have a lot of depth in a certain position, and those situations are hard to find. Like when Mike needed, I forget, a left wing or right wing from me, and he was giving me a really fair deal, like Stamkos for Landeskog, whatever. But it's like I don't want a center, or I didn't need that position, but he really needed Landeskog. But for me, Landeskog wasn't exactly a surplus either. So it's really hard to be in that scenario like me and you, where it's like Hartman and Spurgeon. Yeah, it makes sense. It fits the pieces of the puzzle. And I think that's more, it's like stingy owners, hard to have a surplus of assets in a particular position. Usually it's something like, last year was Barry with a lot of goalies, but you really don't see someone that is like stocked to the brim on left wingers or right wingers, or Ds, of course. So I think that's more the problem than
it's the way some people like approach a trade. Like the reason it's easy with you is because I feel like you approach it like you're playing chess against yourself. Like you're looking at both teams as if you're running both teams. And when you propose a trade, you're trying to make both teams better with the switches that you have in your mind. So it's really easy for somebody receiving an offer like that to say like, oh yeah, okay, I can see where I improve here and where you improve and everything works for everybody. Whereas like, you know, there's some proposed trades where it's like, how about you give me all the shiny stuff and you take this lump of shit? Like, it's nobody's gonna agree to that. Nobody. I mean, well, I mean, you know, recent trades, maybe some crazy offers will be accepted, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be frequent. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think I just start off with asking you if you agree with my assessment of the situation, and you possibly might not. Like, oh, I don't think I need a right winger, and then I'll be like, okay, that's fine. I respect that. I'm trying to find a hole that I can help you fill, so the offer actually makes sense. But yeah, that's a question I'd pose to Barry. Like, is the current trade activity like so like fragile that like if it goes down, we need to worry about it, or not? And we did try 8 teams. Last thing I wanted to mention, we did try 8 teams, I think, before you even joined the league, and then we went back to 6. I don't even remember the actual reason. I just remember, as I said, I think I was competitive. I wanted the top regular season teams to be rewarded for their performance. But now, now that I'm older and a better, I guess, game designer, I'm thinking things should be more fun for more people for longer. I think that's my priority. And that's why it would be 8 teams for me, but it would be 2 weeks each. So like you, Tonin, other Mike have expressed fuck that to double elimination because and Mike suggested that I think Mike and Tonin said that's because that's not hockey, right? I don't know if that's your reasoning behind that too. I'll let you speak to that.
No, that's pretty much it. It just you know, it kind of takes me out of it. It doesn't feel genuine.
and that's why I'm saying like we need to come up with a system. Like my system removes the buy, right? There's no buy. If we want the flavor of the NHL, there's no buy. And when you get a buy, like you didn't get a buy. I did. And I get to face the person that got lucky the week prior, right? And I was able to beat Derek, and then I face you in the finals. But that doesn't seem like, if we don't like the double elimination, I don't see why we like that there's a buy in this one. And it's like, if we go with 8 teams, 2 weeks each, I feel like it's more of a grind. It's a long grind, just like the real NHL. That's my argument. It's like, why not? Why not? And I feel like the champion can remember the 3 teams that they had to battle in a long, playoff run, just like the real NHL, versus like me. I beat Derek 1 week and I beat you in 2 weeks. That's it. That was the road of my championship, and I had to buy.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a choice between double elimination or having a buy, then I guess I would go for double elimination at that point, because I hate the buy. It feels so cheap. It feels so cheap.
It's just that like our regular season is so long that we want to reward, because at some point like this year, the top 4 teams are like me, Barry, John, and Jake, clearly, right? And it'd be like boring if there was nothing to play for once the standings got out of hand. But again, that's why I'm also for my system. It's like, but now we're extending the playoffs and then moving back the trade deadline. So then the regular season is not going to feel like this meaningless marathon for a lot of teams, and we just battle sooner. So that's my last thing I wanted to talk about with you, was like the 3 quick rules, the finals, and then now like trying to see if there's more support for the 8 playoff system. But what about you? Anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, I think that would be really cool if every playoff matchup had the 2 week period and you got that mid not midweek, but after 1 week, you get to do adjustments. It's a bit more interactive rather than just like setting your lineup and like sitting back. And it's anything that keeps people like more invested, interacting with the system. I think it's a positive.
And we keep the limited pickups. The number might have to increase. I don't know, but imagine if you had 3 pickups or 5 only. Or 5, let's say, for the 3 matchups. Like then you have to decide: do I need to pick up people for this matchup? Do I save the 3 pickups just in case for the finals? And usually you're going to need the thing is most of the time it's going to be a truck guy, because usually you're not going to find someone on the waiver wire that's going to influence like goals if you're behind 10, right? Like, so maybe it's like plus minus or truck, or I mean maybe special team points
too, because if we're moving up the deadline for trades and somebody gets fucked by that going into the playoffs, like giving them a bit more wiggle room to adjust mid playoffs might make up for that.
Right. I do wonder like how many pickups start. Now you're making me think whether like the pickups, limited pickups, start at the trade deadline or when the playoffs start.
I think it has to be like after the playoffs have started. At least I assume that's the way it is.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then you have like 6 weeks of playoffs, and then, which is better than what we have, I think, 4 weeks. 6 weeks drawn out. We can have shit talking after week 1 of every round, right? Like, and you can make more memes.
Yeah,
I think it's the way to go. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I mean, goalies are more powerful, but I really think like some people are really strong on keeping the same amount of categories. That's why I don't really, even if I agree or disagree, I'm trying to think about what's the easiest to pass. I told Derek that I'm training. It's like I'm training my skills to be a politician someday. I'm just figuring out what the people want the most and what I can get past the most.
What's the argument though for not going past 10 categories?
There's no arguments for that.
Okay.
I think the main argument is like from both Derek's strong opposition is that they still want goalies to like, because they're important in real life, right? They're the most important position in real life, so they should still feel really important. And going from 4 categories, 3.5. Let's say shutout is like half a category because it doesn't always happen. So going from 3.5 from 2.5 doesn't feel like a lot, but then the ratio wise, it's a lot. So that's why it's tough. Like I'm advocating for what I said in my last post was like, maybe it feels bad because unlike the other categories where you feel like you have a chance every week, if you have bad goaltending, you're going to lose the 4 categories a lot. And that's why it feels bad. When you goals, assists, like I could have, my team was probably one of the most powerhouse offenses last year and the year before, but like any given week, you can beat me in those categories. But if someone has Vasilevsky plus, I don't know, Igor, and you have the Arizona goalie and some other goalie, like you basically lose that 90% of the time. And I proved that by showing Derek's record in the first 10 weeks, and it extends through the whole season. He lost 3 or 4 categories every week. And if we want it to be interesting for everyone, people should have a chance in any category, right? Or if they can't, we should do something about it. Like the amount of categories where you're so behind, and it's not like, and some people like the counter is like, oh, they should have just drafted better. Well, I don't think that's a fair counter argument. Like, who's to say that they didn't try? Like, just because you had success your way, right? Like some of us had great success. Like, I won 4, and I'm here to tell you that I looked at Derek. He tried actively to get better goaltending, and he still lost 3 or 4 categories every single week. So
I mean, you can't draft in a way to avoid your goalie getting lit up and having like a 10 GAA riding the week, hoping that somebody averages it down and just watching it stick, super high. You can't draft to prevent that. Like every team's gonna get lit up at some point. It's
Yeah, and we had Dan who said like finally he has Saros and Ottinger. Um, he has like one of the best duels now, but it took him years to build that, and he's like finally they're they're there now. But again, it shouldn't take. It's not fun, in my opinion, for a team, a general manager, to have to wait many years for their goaltending to not lose consistently 3 or 4 categories. Like the reason game-winning goals have come around to that is because you need categories like game-winning goals, plus minus, and stuff like that, where anybody can win. Just like in poker, pocket aces don't win 90% of the time against a random hand, or ace king against queens is like a 50-50 thing. Like even if you have the better team or the better hand, it's more interesting from I feel like a game mechanics standpoint, getting all nerdy about that, and I'm never gonna actually design my own game, but you have to design it in a way that people have a chance in a lot of these categories. And right now I'm telling you, I can predict how it's going to play out. Even like Gabi's going to finish in the bottom half again because his goalies are Philip Gustafsson, a backup to Fleury, and Alex Nedeljkovic in Detroit. Okay, he might not be a backup to Ville Husso. That goalie everyone's gonna look at because of the Tonin trade, but that's probably not going to win. That's probably going to lose 3 to 4 categories per week. And,
but I mean, Gubby beefed up his draft for next year, right? He has like a whole bunch of picks next year, right?
Ooh, he has some picks from me. He has 3 first-round picks and 2 seconds. So it's looking good if he wants to use some of that to boost his goaltending.
I'm just wondering if like tanks this year just so that his picks next year, like, they're augmented in a way.
Yeah, they might be. I'm looking at Mike's team now. Like maybe the Canucks improve, but he could struggle again because Carter Hart, the Flyers are shit, so he's basically unplayable. And then Demko relies on the Canucks being good, and Logan Thompson, we'll see. We don't know if he's gonna keep. He's gonna fight and win and keep that job. And if he doesn't, and Mike can't find some goalie in free agency, he is once again going to finish out of the playoffs. He has McDavid. His offense, his skaters, they're fine. And I think he's been struggling because he had Carter Hart as his cornerstone, and he blows. Maybe not his fault, just the Flyers are just in general terrible. So that's what I'm saying. It's like that's the problem with goalies. It's like you're either up here or you're down there, and so it makes it really hard to compete. Like you actually actively feel like you're down 3 categories to even start. And
it's like a Mario Kart blue shell scenario. Like in the recent Mario Kart games, you get hit by a blue shell, you're fucked. It's game over. You're maybe 10th, 12th, 11th place, but you're not getting back to first. It ruins your game.
I feel the same way about Tonin's goalies. I mean, I'm praying it turns out well, but Husso, it's their teams in Vanacek in Detroit, New Jersey Devils. Yeah, it's like, maybe they can surprise. That's the thing, but they probably won't anytime soon, and it's going to be a tough struggle, I think. So
this is why Dan was joking that like when you started like picking up a shit ton of goalies, Dan was like, I'm nervous, like I need to follow Carr's strategy, like whatever Carr does, like I'm doing it now. But it's actually, the more I think of it, the more it's actually brilliant, because you have so many people who have goalie dyads who are relying on and it's really uncertain. Like there are some teams where who's starting and who's likely finishing as number 1, but a lot of teams it's like really uncertain. And now you have Carr with a herd of goalies who all might work out, might emerge as studs, and then suddenly who's the master seller? It's you could potentially get a lot of picks for these guys if you could catch a lot of people desperate for goaltending, and you have these prized possessions there. It's not a bad play.
Now that you speak to it, I'll leave I'll end this cast with two gems, two fantasy gems. One that I will get into it more with Derek, I guess, but I will mention it. So the evolution of how I draft. I was known, I think, before you were in the league as someone that always stack goalies, like pick goalies in the draft really early. I picked Holtby in the first round before he went and became, I believe, just a Vezina candidate. But like I would pick all these goalies, but then some years I would totally whiff. Like the goalies would be on teams that suck or they wouldn't keep their job. Like I think I've made a lot of goalie mistakes. So I did a 180, then I stopped picking them because I'm like too much of a crapshoot. And then now I'm going 180 back because I realized that last year when I was struggling with Grubauer, who is by advanced metrics the worst goalie in the league. Like basically there's metrics that show how many goals that are expected a goalie to give based on the type of shot that they're being thrown at and where the shot is being taken. And he was by far the worst, like really bad, like almost historically bad. It was that bad.
Do you have like a heat map for that? Like
some models have some sort of crazy heat map, and then they show you like why he's that bad. And he was by far, like a significant margin, the worst goalie. And what I realized is that as we all have realized, that it's hard to get a goalie. So what Mike did, so I think you was just pick up Ville Husso when he went on a bit of a run, which is like any goalie that has some slither of potential should probably be owned in the DHL. So whereas I identified and I influenced the league, including you, to target goal scorers and truck guys, right, in the draft, what I realized is that those are still, in fact, easier to get than goalies that go on a run, that you are okay. You have to accept that you're going to miss in the draft with the goalies. But because they're so much harder to get, because during the season, I picked up Tage Thompson, who scored over 30. I picked up Brock Nelson, who scored, I think, close to 40. I don't know. He ended the season with a lot. So I picked up a bunch of guys like Hartman, right? He scored, how much did he score last year? Let's take a quick look. He's on your team here. He scored 34 goals. I picked him up. Yeah. So a lot of guys that fill that 30 goal scorers, I picked up more than a handful. Was I able to pick up a good goalie? That was like impossible, right? Like I picked up Quick and traded him to you because I wasn't that sure. I mean, we both agreed it's like you're taking a risk, but you were so desperate that you had to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like, because initially years ago, I don't remember when it was, I traded Quick to you. And even then he was a coin flip and we were like, it might work out. And then I think he got injured and it kind of sucked for you. So then when you proposed the trade, bringing him back, I was like, it's a coin flip, but if he sucks for me, then it's karma. It works out. I deserve it if Quick just like dies on the ice or something.
So I think that's an adjustment that myself included have not made, which is that, again, goalies, like watch out for the backups this year. Like some backups that maybe some of us don't own yet will, like Husso, gain insane value. Like Husso went from like nothing to pick up to like a top. He went on a run where he was like a top 5 stats goalie, right? So it's like there's probably a goalie in the pool that's going to gain significant value. Like, for example, okay, hint, the Vegas backups, right? Like if Logan Thompson goes on a cold streak and then one of the other guys, Aiden Hill, Brossois, go on a run, then they're going to be worth a lot, right? Out of nowhere. And it can happen. Like even backups that we think historically have sucked, they can easily, like Husso, when he was a rookie, I thought he was garbage. So the fact that he went on a run last year was a complete surprise to me and might happen again. So I think for the most part, backup goalies that have a potential to steal the job are probably still a little overlooked or underowned. And to not make this call too long, the last gem I want to make is that people should pay attention to who the top contending teams are dropping. that's a quick shortcut for those of you who don't have time. I mean, Jake loves to brag that he picks up people from me, Barry, or whoever that we give up on. Like, but what he tends to do is pick up names that you recognize. Like when someone drops like Ryan Suter or a few years ago, he'd be the first one to snatch them all up.
He sees him on the waiver wire. He's like, "Oh, that's my
Yeah.
boy. That's my boy."
Yeah. So, and then he feels like he's been able to do that, and he has. But what I've noticed that he largely ignores the ones that are less famous, and those are ones you should keep in mind, because what happens is that some of the top teams, like Barry, let's say, they don't necessarily drop people because they don't believe in the player anymore. They drop them because they ran out of room. Usually, some of the top teams usually are packed to the brim. And that's why when he dropped Rob Thomas, which Tonin picked up and was really happy with Robert Thomas. I mean, I don't think Barry didn't believe in Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas was certainly in my radar. I just didn't have enough room to pick him up. And so people should look at that. I think the reason why I say this is a gem, because once Derek started to do that show where he talked about everyone's pickups, right? He did like a review. I was scared that people would take more notice of the people I was adding dropping, but they really didn't, because because last year I was in the first month. The reason I added and dropped, I don't know if you remember, if you notice, if this name rings a bell, Tanner Janot.
Notice.
But like Mike ended up picking up. But the reason I kept adding and dropping him is because I liked him. I saw the potential, and he was a rookie. He ended up with 24 goals and 512 truck. I just ran out of room. And it was a guy that clearly should have been picked up, and Mike eventually picked him up and kept him on the farm. I needed to find a goalie, so I picked up the Oilers rookie goalie, but that's someone that should be taking notice. So that's the one thing also. If you don't have time, make sure to look at, like, if the player is struggling and he dropped them, okay, maybe there's something wrong, but definitely take a look when one of the top teams have to drop someone, especially when they have guys coming back from IR. That could mean a gem is being dropped. So I also dropped last year Tage Thompson, which Calvin picked up, and Tage last year had ended the season with 38 goals. And I was talking him up in a private chat with the other guys, and I'm like, this guy's like Toronto's best player, but I dropped him. No, Buffalo's best player, but I had to drop him. Ran out of room. So
that's one of the biggest mistakes I made the first couple of years that I was in the league, is I didn't pay enough attention to the waiver wire. Like I think maybe I didn't even pay enough attention to Fantrax that I should have, but the waiver wire, like, yeah, if I could go back in time, I would have fixed some things. But
right. So, it's funny. We laugh. Derek makes a joke that I have jittery hands or whatever because I'm ad dropping every week. But the reality, if we're actually being like serious fanny advice or whatever, is like most people don't drop enough, right? They're committed to the people that they drafted, and most people should either look very carefully at who some of the top teams are dropping, or just sort by the points, like the waiver wire by points last 2 weeks. What are people doing? Because you probably will have, in a month or 2 months, you look at your team, there's going to be at least a bunch of guys on your team that have no business being there. And if you kept them,
fallacy.
What?
The sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, right. Correct.
Like I think I took Mike Hoffman second or third last year or the year before, and I kept him like way longer than I should have, because like, I wasted a second for you. I need to keep you.
But he was injured for a stretch. Like when he came back, I picked him up, maybe, but he was just garbage the whole year.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think it's going to happen to most of us, including myself. I kept Grubauer way longer than I should have. I was waiting for some sort of sign that he would turn it around, but clearly he wasn't going to. And we're all going to do this mistake. But like in general, we probably all do it on some level. We keep most guys, like, if we never drop someone good, that means like what happens is like we eventually have to drop someone good. If we're doing this properly, eventually we're gonna f up by dropping someone that eventually turns it around. But that's how you like. It reminds me. What I just said reminds me of what they say in poker. It's like if you never get caught bluffing, it means you are not bluffing enough. Because like they have to catch you sometimes, right? Some amount of time they're supposed to catch you. But if they never catch you, you definitely should be doing more bluffing. And in the same case here, you're probably not at dropping enough if you've never like dropped someone of some value. Is the lesson here.
But there's the parallel with investing too. Like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about with investing, it applies to these players that we're picking.
Sunk costs, yeah, I agree 100%. And okay, that's it for me, Mike. If you want to say anything.
By the way, I have another MTG themed shirt for next time.
What the hell? It matches with like you could say it's face-to-face games almost. It says face.
There's that. The other one, it's got the forest and it's like run forest run.
Oh,
yeah. There's another one I think that my brother-in-law has that involves hating blue or something, but yeah. I figured I had to put it on because car.
To the face. I like this one a lot.
Oh yeah, the FS, of course.
No, it's just like burned to the face. Also, I like the touch.
Yeah,
I imagine that's why they call it its face. But anyways, good luck with the start of the season. I think we can already pick people up, and some people have picked some people up. So,
good luck to you as well. Except I hope Matt Murray is like left by Toronto at a Salvation Army in a cardboard box. Like we don't want him anymore. So,
all right, good chat. I see John picked up Eric Comrie, the back of Buffalo. 2 hours ago.
We were talking about Comrie before.
Yeah.
Like half as a joke, half as like maybe somebody should pick him up. But yeah, good for you, John.
Okay, I guess players to keep an eye on. I guess as I'm looking before I say bye, like I said, the Vegas backups. I guess Chicago might be good. There's a small chance. Mrazek is good. And I don't know. I like the rest is pretty like Martin Jones, maybe steals the job from Grubauer. And then there's a bunch of people that gain insane value if someone gets injured, right? Like if Igor gets injured, Halak becomes a starter, I guess. And then there's Thomas Greiss for St. Louis now, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, with that, thanks for listening and catch you in the next one.
Absolutely.
Peace.
See you later, Carl.